I have a friend who is currently a pastor in Tucson. We met while volunteering for juvenile detention ministry. So he's one of a small group of people that I can make the tired joke we met in prison. My friend is a very, very faithful follower of Christ. Before becoming a pastor at a church, he spent years as a missionary in Lebanon. In one of his talks that he used to give to the kids in juvenile detention, he listed 4 people that were very prominent in his faith journey and what he was doing for faith. I don't remember most of them, but I do remember number 2 was Naked Dude. The same naked dude that we see here in our reading from the gospel. My friend explained that naked dude represented how far Jesus will go to bring transformation. So we're going to take a look at the story of the naked dude and we find in reading from Luke today. Okay, so this story is found in 3 of the Gospels and is loaded with wonder and symbolism. The symbolism starts right away in our reading. You see, we start off with Jesus stepping out on land. So he had to go across water. Now, as modern people living next to Lake Granbury, water, okay. But in the ancient world, water had a lot of symbolism, especially if you had to go across a body of water because there was a lot of unknown. And especially in this story because the story just before this is the one where they were out on the lake. Jesus was taking a nice nap in the back, going across. The storm comes up. Everyone's worried that the boat's going to capsize, and Jesus just stands up and tells the waters to be calm. So that's the boat ride they were on going over here. So just imagine that, you're one of the disciples. Let's just say you're Thomas. Thomas gets more ink later, but up to this point, not so much. So as Thomas, you're like, I've been following Jesus for a while. That boat thing, wow, he calmed the sea. That's pretty amazing. Pardon the pun, but that might have been the high water mark of Jesus' ministry at that point in time. So as Thomas, you're thinking, well, maybe once we get across to land, we can have, an easy day. Maybe we'll just get some water, maybe even some wine, some bread. We'll hang out, and we'll listen to Jesus. But as soon as you get to shore, Thomas, Jesus, and the companions are greeted by something else. So at this time, now I know we usually don't do this, but what I want to do is kind of read a little bit of the Bible where it talks about this a little bit, So can I have a volunteer? Alex, you want to volunteer to read it? Just stand up and read it right where you are. Verse 28, just stand up and read it.
When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me."
That sounds almost right, but I think you don't have the right translation. It's not quite right. It's not what I have here. Anna, you want to give it a try?
When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me."
I think you have the same translation your brother has. Okay? So do we have one more volunteer? Oh, Melanie, please, go ahead.
When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me."
Melanie has the right translation. Very good. This man shouted at the top of his lungs to get Jesus' attention. So whatever Thomas suspected about the quiet day, that's not happening. And he realizes that he may be on the beginning of something even bigger here. Even bigger. And this person, this naked dude, knew something about Jesus, or perhaps more correctly, the demons that possessed him knew something about Jesus that maybe even the disciples didn't see. You see, this story is not just about one man. It's about something bigger. We see here in the reading from Luke speaks volumes about what we perceive as acceptable and normal. So let's take a look at that. Let's start with naked dude himself and how he's described, what we know. So first we have to look where Jesus is. Jesus left the confines of the mainly Jewish area, and now he's in a Gentile area. Okay? So the man running is a Gentile. So, in some ways, that's strike one. Okay? Obviously, he's not properly attired. Okay? So, also a violation of Jewish law. And third, he's possessed by demons and living among the dead. So this is an unclean person who, from the standpoint of Jewish law, should not be around a rabbi. But he runs to Jesus, this three-time loser, and the powers that are in Jesus, that know Jesus rather, beg him. We imagine that's the urgency of the powers of this, not of this world, but that are in this world. We know something's going to happen. We know that Jesus is not going to allow this situation to occur. And the powers that are possessing this man, they know it too. They know it too. They're trying to negotiate. They're trying to negotiate some mercy, which is ironic because the powers that are possessing this man showed no mercy to the man, yet they are asking for mercy from Jesus. Because they did not want Jesus to order them into the abyss. Knowing this, Jesus gave them permission to go into the pigs. And the pigs did not stay where they were. They didn't just be occupied by the spirits. The unclean spirits drove the pigs into the lake, into the symbol of chaos, into the place of water. The man was now free of the spirits. So let's take a look deeper. Jesus asks the man, or more specifically the evil spirits, before he gives them permission to leave, he asks them what his name is. So, the man, the possessed man, responds with legion. Okay? And we get a little explanation from Luke there. Well, legion meaning many. But, oh my goodness, that word legion is just dripping with symbolism. Because legion was the way that the Roman occupying force was described. It was the blank legion who was in charge there. You know, the spirit, or Luke recording it, could have said multitude or many or mob or something else, but no, they used the word legion. And that legion went into a group of pigs, and the symbol of one of the legions in that area was a boar's head, like a wild boar head, so more symbolism. Nobody who was reading this at this time could say, oh, I don't understand the symbolism. They would have understood it. Now, what are we to do with this symbolism? You know, the spirits went into the pigs hoping to avoid the abyss, and they didn't seem to last long in there. They went off and perished. So what symbols and theological ideas of good and evil can we explore here? Well, we could spend a lot of time on what good and evil are doing at this point, but I want to spend some time on perception. I want to spend some time how different groups are going to look at this whole event, and perhaps maybe even to understand how the people are responding. So, let's take a look at different groups. Jewish readers or witnesses to this event would focus on what is unclean. What is unclean? The unclean spirits were removed from the man and occupied into unclean animals. Pigs were unclean to Jews. And then they plunged to death, that chaos, that unknown. Modern readers, however, may wonder, why did the evil spirits cause the pigs to run in the lake? And why go into the pigs? Early Christian converts from paganism would be confused as to what's this whole evil to unclean connection. Different groups have different perceptions. Now, let's consider what the Gentiles in the area might be thinking. Losing a herd of pigs? Well, that's an economic loss. Perhaps, maybe if the pigs were consigned as food for the Roman occupying forces, a Gentile peasant could consider, well, that's a strike against the occupying force. But would there be Roman retaliation? Would a bigger Roman force be coming down because they lost something? How would the owners and the workers make up for this loss? Also, consider how this event would be portrayed to those who didn't see it, who didn't have the eyewitness account. Would cosmic good and evil be part of the event that they reported? Or would the story be stranger from out of town drives pig herd into lake? We start seeing how the town may not be so enamored with Jesus at this point, as the reporting of this pig event began to spread. So now, back to the story. Back to the story, and starting back with the guy we started with, naked dude. We find out that the delegation from the town came out, and what do they see? They see this man who used to be totally out of control, who used to live by the tombs, who had no clothes, who could not be controlled by even chains and bindings, is now sitting with clothes. Thankfully, someone gave him some clothes. And he's sitting in front of Jesus, in his right mind, listening to him. They saw this man, who used to be somebody else, now have a different idea, a different identity. The witnesses to the event, know that this guy used to be irrational and possessed by evil, but now he seems to be healed. Yet the people from the town, knowing what happened with the pigs, and hearing how the man was now healed, you thought, well, maybe this will change their mind. Because obviously this man, this individual, is worth more than a herd of pigs, but they didn't change their mind. Why didn't they change their mind? Surely this evidence should have of this transformed man was big. Well, I'm not so sure this is such an obvious equation. Life was, perhaps not as valuable in the ancient world. I would like to think that things have changed. But we are often confronted by examples of the opposite. Some lives are worth more than others in our world. We've made a lot of progress in proclaiming that all humans are the children of God. All humans are worthy of love and respect. But we still have a long way to go. And I'm worried we may be going in the wrong direction. I'm worried that we divide our world, and then we try and demonize the them and the us and them. It's almost as if we want to reverse the transformation of this man from possessed and unclean to now a member of society. The former naked dude was transformed. And he wanted to live into his transformation. He wanted to get on the boat and follow Jesus. He wanted to leave those people who knew him as a crazy possessed man. Yet, Jesus did not allow him to join his band of disciples. Now, we hear other places where Jesus calls people, hey, set what you've got behind you and follow me. But not this man. Not this man. No, you see, Jesus had a job for him. A job that was even more important and very much more difficult than following Jesus. Jesus told him to stay here, go back to his people, and share what his transformation meant to him and to his community. You see, transformation, it's scary. It's scary. You know, let's say you have a friend or a relative who always seem to be in need and often places blame and with people who don't deserve the blame. How would you react if this person, kind of suddenly got their act together and now was very responsible and never blamed anyone else? Would you be suspect or would you celebrate the transformation? What about that guy who's homeless and always asking for money on the median? I mean, you see him there all the time. But then one day, instead of seeing him on the median, you see him in this bright, crisp custodian uniform, and you see that he's actually got a staff of people he's managing at this time. Would you celebrate that transformation and say, wow, that is great, praise be to God? Or would that nagging doubt in your mind go back to say, how long is this going to last? How long is this going to last? Or even on a bigger scale, how would society react if we really took on poverty and homelessness? What if we used resources to take on extreme poverty? Would people be resentful that the economy changed? Would people be resentful that a living wage meant someone poor could afford things, but things would cost more? Would we be mad? Like the owners of the pigs that ran off the cliff? Transformation for ourselves, for our friends, for our society, and for our world is hard. It is hard. It is easier to just ignore what we see. It's easier to just let things be. But what are we called to do? I think we're called to do the hard thing. To do the hard thing like the formerly naked dude. Amen.